Okay, so first we're going to look at attentive chanting in general, and then we're going to look at a very interesting way of understanding attentive chanting from the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam that I think I personally found very interesting and very helpful, and I'm hoping that you will as well. So there's a very famous story. I would rather have air. In fact, this room is extremely stuffy. If it's possible to open those windows entirely, and if it's possible to open the doors so we get some cross ventilation, that would be really nice. I assume that all of you are perfectly capable of tolerating London noise. Okay. I'd rather tolerate London noise than stuffiness. And again, thank you very much for being willing to wait. I'm sorry there was a delay. One of those things. So there was a company that had bought a boiler, and it was powering their factory, and it stopped working properly. So they tried asking different repair people to come and fix the boiler, and different people would come and they would try to fix it, and maybe it would work for a day or two and then it would break again. And the managers of the company were getting really frustrated. Then one of the vice presidents says, I know a really expert repairman. He can come and fix this boiler. So they call the expert repairman, and he has a little mini hammer, and he goes on the boiler, tap, tap, tap. And after an hour of that, he finds a place and he goes, wham. And then he says, if it's still working in 2 weeks, let me know, and I'll send you an invoice. So after 2 weeks, it's still working, and the president says, okay, send us an invoice. He sends an invoice, 5,000 pounds. And the president's like, 5,000 pounds? He said, could you send me an itemized invoice? So he sends back, hitting the boiler, 5 pounds. Knowing where to hit the boiler, 4,995 pounds. If we're going to look at what's one thing we could do that would really be like jet fuel in our spiritual life? What's one thing? And the problem with that question is that there's a lot of valid answers. We could definitely, authoritatively, shastrically say that one thing is sadhu sangha. Sadhu sangha, sadhu sangha, sarva shastri koi, lava matra sadhu sangha, sarva siddhi hoy. If you associate with the sadhu for an 11th of a second, you can attain perfection. It's not a long time. An 11th of a second. We're just reading yesterday in the 3rd canto that Lord Brahma's day equals less than a second for Lord Vishnu. Our whole lifetime is a billionth of a second for Lord Brahma. But in that little spotlight, as Prabhupada says, if you get 11ths of a second association with a devotee, and we could definitely talk about how that the quality of our association with devotees is the most important factor in our attaining to love for the divine Prince of Vraja. So we could say that. We could also say that Shastra, right? Srila Rupa Goswami gives 5 items out of the 64. He gives 5, and he said these 5 are so potent that even a very small practice of them can bring one to perfection, even if you're a neophyte. One of them is the association of devotees. One of them is the Shastra, especially the Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada would sometimes say, if you just read one word, if you just read one sentence, you can become perfect. Right? That we can meditate on one verse for months. Another is the Dham. It said you just spend 3 days in Mathura Mandala and you can become perfect. Srila Rupa Goswami will say that if you're in the Dham and you have a shadow or a reflection of ecstasy, it can turn into the real bhava just by being in the dham. And again, even if you're a beginner in bhakti, with just a shadow of ecstasy. So the dham is so powerful. And then worshiping the deity. Just seeing the deity. Just seeing the arati, just some basic worship is, again, it's so powerful that that alone can bring us very, very quickly to pure Krishna consciousness. So it's not exactly proper to say that it's only attentive chanting. That wouldn't be accurate. And one can attain to full Krishna consciousness from any of the 64 angas of bhakti, which can then be categorized into 9. And often Srila Prabhupada will talk about this. He said if you can't do all 9 processes, hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping, serving the lotus feet, friendship, surrender, if you can't do all of them, he said, we'll do some of them, or at least one of them, and you'll become perfect. So that's true. That's not untrue. At the same time, we have the statement Harinama, Harinama, Harinama Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, 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 Bhakti. They used to have in Bhaktivedanta Manor, they used to have that verse above the altar. I'm really glad they took it down. Do you know why? Because for English-speaking people, it looked like it said, nasty Ava, nasty Ava, nasty Ava. And I was thinking, people are going to come and, who's this Ava lady? And why is she so nasty? And why are we advertising this on the front of the altar? Thank you, Madhava. She's absolutely first class. I wouldn't be able to do anything that I do without her. So that's also true, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that in this age of Kali, there's no other way but the holy name. And something that I've thought about, meditated on, prayed about so many times is Srila Prabhupada gave us 4 regulated principles that we take vows about. None of those are bhakti, you know that, right? There's plenty of people who are vegetarians or vegans or who don't take intoxication, and they could be atheists. They could have no spirituality at all. There's plenty of people who never gamble. I mean, there's people who follow these regulated principles that they, in and of themselves, they're not spiritual. There's only one vow that Prabhupada had us take for sadhana. There were other instructions he gave, like you should rise early and attend Mangalarti, but he didn't make us vow to do that. If you miss the Mangalarti, you're not breaking a vow. Everybody follow? Prabhupada told us to study the scriptures every day, but he didn't make us vow to do that. I didn't take a vow that I'm going to read Prabhupada's books every day. I mean, I try to read Prabhupada's books every day, but if for some reason I can't read in one day, I'm not breaking a vow. But he's asking us to take this vow, and then he's not asking us to take a vow of kirtan, even though we're saying that the primary chanting is Sankirtan. He's asking us to take a vow of private, meditative chanting. And I've also thought about this fact a lot, that 16 rounds is a lot of time. I mean, often Prabhupada would speak about it, minimizing it, and saying, it only will take you 2 hours. Some people maybe would take an hour and a half. It's not going to take less than an hour and a half. And I've also thought very, very deeply, is there any other major religion in the world that asks this much daily practice of its non-monastic members? And I've concluded that there isn't any. There's no branch of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Buddhism that makes this kind of time demand from its non-monastic members. Do you understand what I'm saying? You know, if you live in a monastery and that's all you're doing all day, you're probably praying 10 hours a day. And then those of us who get second initiation, 3 Gayatris, that's another at least 15 minutes. Yes? And then if we do basic things like reading the Shastra and worshiping the Lord, I mean, even if you're doing these things at home, you're looking at like 3 hours a day. But our 16 rounds is 1.5 to 2 hours, something like that, depending on the individual, but somewhere in that range. And that's a very big commitment. Another thing that I've really thought about, and I've thought about the fact that there is no way we would could get the majority of the world's population to make that kind of a commitment for a daily spiritual practice. That's just not going to happen. I've also considered that most people in the world don't wake up in the morning and say, I really want a daily spiritual practice that takes me 2 hours a day. I just don't think that most people are actively looking for something like that. I'm bringing this up because what Prabhupada's asking us is difficult. I want to acknowledge the fact that it is difficult. It's not easy. He's putting a demand on us. Let's put aside the 4 Urmila principles for today and how some of those might be difficult for some people. But what he's asking us as sadhana is a difficult commitment for most people to make. It just is. Yeah? Now it's also difficult in another way. And this is something, again, I've thought about this a lot in terms of, I mostly what I do is I'm writing and I'm teaching. And I've thought about how all the other aspects of Krishna consciousness that we do have some element of them that is also, we could say, sensory. It's sensory pleasing. So prasadam tastes and smells good. It's probably our main sense gratification in the Hare Krishna movement is prasadam. Kirtans are usually musically pleasurable. It's pleasurable to dance and to sing. London is full of places where people go to dance and sing. If our movement were to ever take over London, we would transform the nightclubs into kirtan halls that serve, non-alcoholic beverages. But that's very pleasurable. Studying Leela is very pleasurable. Am I correct? I have not yet met a member of the Hare Krishna movement, maybe there's one out there, who are like, I don't really like to hear about Krishna's Leela. I haven't met such a person. That's extremely pleasurable. We don't usually need to have seminars on how can you increase your relishing of Krishna's path, because we're already relishing. It's easy. Even relishing the philosophy is pleasurable for most people. Am I correct? Dressing the deities, the beauty of the deities, the flowers, the jewelry. I remember my mother saying, your movement preaches renunciation. She said, but your temples are full of sensory pleasures. You come in the temple room, the incense, the flowers, and I remember my father saying, and they're all real flowers. So all of those things have some element that's pleasing and attractive to our senses. But japa does not. At all. Just not, there's nothing there. Now you might say that done properly japa is pleasing to the mind. One could make that argument. But that's certainly not easy for a beginner to realize that. So, my dear friends, we're looking at the only vow that Prabhupada gives us is an extended spiritual practice that's very personal and that has no sense gratificatory elements at all. There's nothing there that we can feel, well, this is pleasing to my senses. And this is a higher demand than any religious organization makes on their lay members. So I'm saying this because we should start with some self-compassion that what we're trying to do is hard. What Srila Prabhupada asked us to do is not easy. To sit down and have a meditative practice for 1.5 to 2 hours a day, where all of our pleasure has to come internally from the quality of our meditation. We don't have a crutch, right? Like my hand's broken, so I have a cast. I have a support. And we don't have any. We have crutches for all of our other spiritual activities, but not this one. So first, acknowledge for yourself this is hard. Acknowledge when you're helping other people that it's hard. Don't guilt trip people about japa, please. Don't pressure people, don't guilt trip people, and don't guilt trip yourself either. It was in this room many years ago that this one devotee came to me and said, since I've had kids, I'm struggling to finish my rounds, and so I'm always feeling guilty. And I said, well, if you're always feeling guilty about your rounds, you'll actually chant less of them. Because we're anandamaya biasat, we're pleasure seeking. And so if we associate anything with negative emotions, we're going to tend to avoid it. Does that make sense to everybody? So if every time I think about my job, I'm like, my job is so bad. It actually makes it harder for us to chant. Does everyone understand this? So I was explaining the psychology for like 10 minutes. And I said, celebrate what you're doing right instead of kicking yourself for what you're doing wrong. Yes, Mataji, yes. I said, okay, so how many rounds have you chanted today? She said, I have 4 left. And I went, oh. So I recently was working with one devotee, fairly new to the movement, and he was saying to me, he said, all of my mentors and seniors are constantly asking me, when are you going to chant 16 rounds and get initiated? When are you going to chant 16 rounds and get initiated? He said, so all I think about when I think about japa, he said, I just feel bad. He said, I'll just feel bad and I just feel guilt and shame. And I said, well, again, if you're associating negative emotions with your japa, it's going to make it harder and harder for you to do it. So I worked out a 10-day plan. And I said, look, I don't want you to chant more than 2 rounds a day. I said, I forbid you to chant more than 2 rounds a day. I said, you can chant more Hare Krishnas, but you can't count them. You're only allowed to count 2. Do you have any idea why I did that? So when he would chant 2 rounds, what would he feel? Achievement. It would be a win. It wouldn't be, well, you're so fallen, you just chant 2 for now. Then that was a negative, I'm fallen. But instead this became a win. And I gave him other things to look for. Do you make a sankalpa before you chant? Afterwards, what's your focus? What's your meditation? Right, so we did this for 10 days, and then we evaluated it and changed what we were looking at a little bit. Then another 10 days. By the time we got to the third 10 days, he said, I've come up with a system. He said, so I make some herbal tea for my wife every morning. He said, that's the only thing I really like do for her. He said, and I was waiting till I finished my japa and then making the tea. He said, but then I found I was rushed making it, and it's a whole process that I go through. He said, so what I discovered is, I start setting up the tea, I let it like simmer and stuff. Then I go chant my first round for 15 minutes. Then I come back to step 2 of the process, get that going, chant my second round for 15 minutes, and then everything's done. And I went, oh. What was one of his problems? 15 minutes is too long. And I hadn't asked him, this is my responsibility, I hadn't asked him from the beginning, how long is it taking you to chant a round? Ayendra Prabhu talked about when he first started chanting japa, he thought it was like you would chant Om. So you would chant Hare Krishna. And he was like, how do these people chant 16? So then I said to him, I didn't know it was taking 15 minutes. I said, no wonder you're not chanting 16 minutes. I said, let's work on the time. I said, I don't want you to increase the number of rounds until you get the time down, because I don't want you to embed this habit of long chanting. So after probably like 2 months of working with him, he said, I'm now really looking forward to chanting. He said, I love chanting. It's my favorite time of the day, and it's something I'm really enthused about. Can I please chant more? I said, get the time down first. I said, you can chant more, but I just want you to count 2 until you get the time down. But everything shifted. Everything shifted according to his attitude. So I do want to start with that. Think about your what we call self-talk in relationship to your japa. Do you read the 10 offenses and go, oh, I'm finished? I'm just finished up, just nothing. And I talk about this all the time, but it's worth repeating. Srila Prabhupada talks about the process of sadhana like a child learning how to walk. How many of you have watched children learning how to walk? Anybody here watch children learning how to walk? So do they celebrate their wins or do they lament their struggles? They celebrate their wins. And when children are learning how to walk, are they mostly walking or mostly falling? Mostly falling. It starts out with like 99% falling. They stand up for a second and they get all excited. Ah! And everyone else gets excited. The parents take pictures and they send to the grandparents and the aunties and the uncles. My kid stood up for 1 minute. When Prabhupada stayed with the Agarwals when he first came to America, Sally Agarwal talked about how her son stood up for the first time when Prabhupada was there. And there's a photograph taken of them. So little children do not get discouraged at all by how many times they fall, even though they often get bruised, by the way. They'll fall into things, yeah? They'll bump into things. It doesn't deter them at all. And my dear friends, all of you can walk, yes? You wouldn't have made it up to this room otherwise. That means we all did this. That means we all learned how to walk. That means that we all, same with talking. So we all are capable of celebrating our wins. So everything that we're going to talk about today, I'd like you to put in that frame. Celebrate the wins. If you don't get everything perfect, you have difficulty, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, go on and celebrate your wins. Don't focus on the struggle. Srila Prabhupada has asked us to do something that is not easy. He's given us a spiritual practice that is not easy. Okay? So it's all right if it's something that we take some time to grow into and that we have some challenges with it. That's okay. It doesn't mean we're a bad person or a bad devotee or an insincere devotee or anything like that. At the same time, Prabhupada says this is his most important instruction, is to chant 16 minutes. So it's something worth giving attention to. All right. I think since I have a handout, I'm going to go to that first. So I want to just very briefly talk about stuff that you all probably already know. I don't want to talk about this in depth and probably bore most of you. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that being attentive to quantity is also a kind of attention. In other words, if we've taken a vow of 16 rounds, to be attentive. If we haven't yet taken a vow of 16 rounds, Prabhupada talks about in Nectar Devotion that over endeavor, he defines this as take a vow of sadhana that you can maintain. So if you haven't yet taken a vow of 16 rounds, if you've made a determination for 1 round or 2 or 4, and you maintain that every day, no matter what, I mean, unless there's like an emergency, you got tube down your throat in the hospital, that is also a kind of attention. And I think of this like if you're cooking meals for your family and every day you're going to make sure your family has 2 or 3 meals. Even if not all those meals are, top Michelin chef quality, the fact that you're putting food on the table for your family means something. Am I making sense? Yes? Now, if every meal is a low-class meal, that's a problem. But at least I'm there for you. So at least show up for Krishna every day. That's also something. Try to find a good place. Try to find a place that's free from distractions. If your distraction is in your pocket, take your distraction out of your pocket and put it someplace far away. Or put it on airplane mode or something. Nowadays we carry our distraction box with us. Yes? So even if we go to a place where there's no distraction. Some people, if you can do it, some people have a special place in their house or their flat that's just for chanting. If you can do that, Such a program is very good psychologically because your mind knows, in this place I'm going to chant. Do you understand what I'm saying? That you trained your mind. This is the place I'm going to be with Krishna. This is my personal time with Krishna. Also regularly hearing about the importance and the glories of the holy name. In many temples, every morning after Mangalarti, they'll read something from the Shastra about the glories of the holy name. This helps build our faith in what we're doing, right? Why am I doing this? What are the glories of the holy name? Even if they're not something that we're fully and regularly presently experiencing, it gives us some hope. And regularly hearing in general about Krishna, we'll look at this a little bit with the quotes from Srila Prabhupada, that I can't meditate on someone I don't know anything about. The Prabhupada said when you're chanting, you naturally remember Krishna, but if you don't know who Krishna is, you can't remember him. And just in a class the other day, I was hearing Prabhupada saying that you have, in order to love God, you have to know him. So we can go to beginners who know nothing about Krishna and ask them to join in the kirtan and ask them to chant, but our chanting cannot mature unless we actually know something about Krishna. It's good to have certain times of the day when we are doing our chanting, if at all possible. Again, the more that we can regulate time and place, if we can, the easier it is for our mind to accept that this is our time and place to chant. The less our mind will be going, but you have to do this, and you have to do this, and what about this, and what about this, and what about this, and what about this? Because our mind knows, I'll take care of that later. Yes? If I've told my mind, at 9 a.m. I'm going to deal with this, and then you have to actually deal with it at 9 a.m. But right now is my chanting time. We follow this kind of policy with other things in our life. Maybe our quality time with our significant other, our quality time with our children, or if we have some project we're working on, something we're trying to write, or some hobby that we're trying to create, we have set aside some time. This is just my quality time. I met one person in New York who said, you know, I make sure that I work out at the gym, and when I work out at the gym, I turn off my phone. This is my time to take care of my health. I'm going to make sure I'm not distracted, and I tell myself, you have nothing else to worry about in the world now except getting fit. So we can also do this with our japa. This is my time to be with Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur also recommends that we have some times of extended chanting. So maybe on Ekadasis, maybe, of course, in the Hare Krishna movement, festival days are often the worst time to do extended chanting. You know, when I used to organize all the dramas for Janmashtami, I'd often be finishing my 16 rounds at 11 o'clock at night because I was so busy running around all day. So, you know, sometimes the festivals are the worst time to just sit and chat. I remember I was once in Trinidad on Janmashtami, and I actually left the festival, went back to the room I was staying. I'm like, I'm just going to sit down there and chant extra rounds and read Krishna book and get away from the crowd. But if you can find some time, some Ekadasi, some festivals, some time when you can do extended chanting, that's also extremely helpful. You know, and there's places you can go. Of course, some of these are in India, and then you've got to get a ticket to India and all that kind of stuff. What we've done here, right? Michael, we had our extended whole day japa workshop, Michael, right? Many years ago. Yeah? We had a whole day. So it's nice to have that kind of thing, that you set aside a day, okay, we're going to chant 32 rounds on this day, or we're going to chant 64 rounds on this day, and really have this time of focus. And that really helps then when you go to chant 16 rounds. You know, or if you're able to do it, if you're able to spend the month of Kartik chanting 64 rounds a day, only checking your email twice a week, you know, if you can do it, then when you go back to your regular life, focusing for 16 rounds becomes extremely easy. Ultimately, and then leading a pure life. If the time when we're not chanting, we're distracted by a gazillion million things not related to Krishna, then when it's our chanting time, those are going to impede on our consciousness. So therefore, we have these 4 regulated principles. Of course, even if you're not yet following the 4 regulated principles, you should still chant Hare Krishna. We don't say you have to first follow and then you can chant. But the more purified your life is, what you're eating, what you're taking into your body through your mouth, what you're taking into your body through your eyes, what you're taking into your body through your ears, is going to affect your quality time with the Lord. So as far as possible, have a life that's surrendered, that's purified, as far as you can do. Mm-hmm. And also begging mercy, because this, ultimately what we're doing in japa is we're talking to Krishna. We're having a relationship. This is a very long garment, a very nice mogra. We're having a relationship with a person. And we're having, I never know how to say this without it being heavy, but it is heavy. I'm sorry, or I'm not sorry, or I'm sorry that I'm not sorry. We conditioned souls are here because we are offenders. We are in this material world, in a material body. Unless you come from the spiritual world on a mission, and you don't have any karma or material desires. But we're here because we're offenders. We're looking at Krishna's creation and seeing how I can enjoy it myself. It's like if I came here and said, oh, that's a nice chair, I think I'll take it home. We're offenders. We're trying to forget Krishna. We're trying to remove Krishna from our consciousness. Although he's everywhere and in everything, and he's our best friend. Yeah? I compare it to, someone who's cheated on their spouse. So if someone is, they're married, but they've had 50 girlfriends. And then one day they come home and say, my dear wife, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to be faithful. I'm going to love you. She's not going to immediately, probably, she's not going to immediately let him back into the house. Probably. She might be excited to see him. She might say, if she wants the relationship restored, which Krishna wants the relationship restored, Prabhupada says 10 times more than we want it. So if she wants the relationship restored, then she'll be very happy that he's come back. But she's going to be wary. Sachinanda Maharaj said, we often think, do I trust Krishna? But the real question is, does Krishna trust me? So when she may say to him, well, you're going to have to show me over some time that you've actually changed. So who's the one in a situation like that who decides when the relationship is restored? The cheating person or the one who was cheated? The one who was cheated, right? If anyone, as any of you ever had a time that you had some sort of any kind of relationship with someone and that person really broke trust? Have you ever had a relationship with somebody who really broke trust? Mm-hmm. Some of you are very odd. You live in the same world as me, I don't know. So if someone's really broken trust with you, you get to decide when the relationship is restored. Correct? It's clear? Right? There was this one lady who kept breaking my trust over and over and over and over. And finally I said, you know what? You may not contact me for a year. I said, you can come to my classes, but you may not, no personal contact for a year. After 2 months, she wrote me and she said, I know what I did wrong and I'm sorry. And I said, if you knew what you did wrong, you wouldn't have contacted me for a year. If somebody was going to reach out in less than a year, who did that person have to be? Me. Is this, you understand? I could decide after 2 months, okay, you've been behaving for 2 months, I'm going to reach out to you. But that wasn't her decision. We're the offenders. Not Krishna. We are. He gets to decide when to reach out to us. That is not our choice. And our mood should be patient. Often we think humility is... That's not, actually that's Tamagun. But part of humility is patience. I'm the one who's in the wrong. and therefore I cannot make any demands. I have no entitlement. I have no entitlement. So there's a lovely story in this connection with this devotee, Mukunda. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in a mood of giving out benedictions to everyone. He was showing that he was God. He was giving everyone benedictions. And then someone said, what about Mukunda? You haven't given him any benedictions. And Lord Chaitanya says, well, he hangs out with the devotees and then he'll hang out with the offenders and the impersonalists. So I don't want to see him. Will you ever see him? I will see him after 10 million births. So I'd like you to think about that. Suppose we go out and we're distributing books and we say, read this Bhagavad Gita and you will attain perfection in 10 million births. Join our Hare Krishna movement. You will attain perfection in 10 million births. I mean, if anyone had said that to me, I'd say, forget it. I'm going to find some other place to practice spirituality. But Mukunda didn't say that. He didn't say, I'm leaving then. He started dancing. And the devotees told Lord Chaitanya, Mukunda's dancing. Why is he dancing? He's saying, someday the Lord will see me. Someday the Lord will see me. Someday the Lord will see me. And then what did Lord Chaitanya say? Bring him in now. That attitude of patience, now if you do it manipulatively, if you say, well, I'm going to pretend that I'm patient, so then the Lord will bring me in right now, that's Krishna doesn't play those sort of games. But if we actually give up our pride and feeling of entitlement while we're chanting, because I'm going to say again, what Prabhupada has asked us to do is not easy. We may get a taste, we may not. The taste may come and go. And if we're not patient, then that means that we're proud, that we're entitled. When you're going to show up in your holy name already? Where are you? When you're sitting here on the doorstep, that's the antithesis of the mentality. If the cheating husband says to the wife, you know, I did what you said. I did everything on your list. I've been following it for 2 weeks now. Let me in. She's going to say, you lost the whole point. Clear? That's the absolute antithesis of the mentality that we need. Another true story I can tell you in this connection. So in the medieval times in Europe, in a Christian monastery, so the monks would take different levels of vows, like they would take a novitiate vow and then later they would take a permanent vow. So this one monk had only taken like beginning vows. And in those days the monasteries were used like restaurants and hotels. There weren't separate restaurants and hotels. When you traveled, you would stay at a convent or a monastery, you'd give some donation. It helped to support the convents and monasteries, and it meant when you stayed someplace you were in some kind of religious atmosphere. So this family stayed with this attractive young woman, and this fairly new monk got attracted to the girl and left the monastery and followed the family and decided he'd marry this girl and was doing some service for the family. And after a few months, he thought, what did I do? Why did I leave? I should go back. So he goes back to the monastery and he talks to the father in charge of the monastery, the chief monk. And the chief, he says, I really want to come back. And the head of the monastery, the abbot, I guess he was called, he said, well, it's up to all the brothers. He said, it's okay with me, I'm satisfied, but everyone else has to agree. So he takes in front of a meeting with everybody, and not all of them agree. And it was the winter time in Europe. And so the abbot said, you're going to have to just wait outside the door of the monastery until all the brothers agree. And he said, here's my wool cloak. You can have the wool cloak. And some of the brothers would come and bring him some food and water, but he's sitting in the snow. And every once in a while he'd knock on the door. Have they decided yet? No. And then he would just wait. After 3 days he started to get a fever. And the guard told the brothers, he's starting to get a fever out here in the cold. And the brothers were so moved that he was waiting there for 3 days patiently that again they all said, bring him in. So this mentality of patience and asking for mercy, not asking for mercy like we're entitled to mercy. But my dear Lord, please be merciful to me. Please reveal yourself to me in your name. Please give me a taste for chanting, right? This is how Mahaprabhu prays. When will my eyes be decorated with tears of love? When will I have these ecstasies? Please pick me out from this ocean of birth and death. So this mood in our chanting. And also, Bhaktivinoda Thakur emphasizes if we want Nam Ruchi, we have to have Jivadoya. We're not going to have a taste for the name unless we have compassion for all living entities. It will not work. Lord Kapila Dev said if we don't treat all living entities with compassion, then if we're offering oblations into a fire, it's like we're offering oblations into ashes. It will not be effective. And this is not just offending devotees, and it's certainly not just offending whoever we think are exalted devotees. First of all, we don't know who's an exalted devotee, my dear friends. We don't know who's an exalted devotee. It may be the person taking out the trash. Prabhupada told us to celebrate Jayananda's disappearance day like we celebrate Narottama Das Thakur's disappearance day. And he was doing ostensibly Shudra type work, right? He's taking out the trash, he's building the Rathayatra carts, he's going buying the Bhoga. But he was the greatest devotee in the temple. And we don't always know who the greatest devotees are. I've met many, many members of this Hare Krishna movement who are on very high levels of spiritual advancement. Some of them have dandas, and some of them have titles and positions, and some of them don't. Some of them don't. Some of them are you just making garlands, or sweeping the floor, or working outside at a job with 3 kids at home. So it's not only who we think are the advanced devotees, but all living entities. Every living entity is a part of Krishna. And we should be kind to everyone. That doesn't mean we should live with everyone. It doesn't mean that we have to become, close with everyone if people are very offensive or if they're criminal or something like that. But we should be kind and compassionate to everyone. And if we're not, Krishna will not reveal himself to us. Full stop. He just won't. It won't happen. So these kind of attitudes towards our japa are not just during japa time. Okay. So I want to go on now. You have a handout, I guess, on your phone, which looks like this. Everybody find this? Everybody find this? Okay. So this next portion of what I'm going to teach is based on a 15-hour seminar given by His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj that I attended in 2002 in Rotterdam, Belgium. And I asked Maharaj, I said, can I have your permission to shorten this and teach it? And he said, yes, with my blessings, and he gave me all of his notes. About a fourth of them were in Russian. So if you're very interested in this topic, you can find online, if you look up Bhakti Vigyan Goswami, Liberation Through Sound, you can find the full 15-hour seminar. So I'm giving you a little piece of it. Okay, and obviously I don't have, my fault, Madhavadai, I didn't give you everything. No, I'm just going to pull it up on my phone because I something I forgot to give you, and that's completely, totally, absolutely my fault. I am sure. Could not connect to Wi-Fi network. Thankfully, that. But at least all of you were able to pull that up? Yes? Yeah, I got data. Yeah, I'm good. I don't know why I'm not connecting to the Wi-Fi, but it's fine. Thank you for being patient. Appreciate that. Krishna helping me become humble that I'm not always together. Excellent. Okay. So, in Bhagavatam 3, you do not have this. In Bhagavatam 3:26-32, the translation is, when egoism and ignorance is agitated by the sex energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the subtle element sound is manifested, and from sound come the ethereal sky and the sense of hearing. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from the purport. Prabhupada says, it is stated also in the Vedanta, I want you to listen carefully because I'm going to ask you a question about this. I'm going to ask you what points Prabhupada's making. It is stated also in the Vedanta Sutra that sound is the origin of all objects of material possession, and that by sound one can also dissolve this material existence. Anavritti Shabdat means liberation by sound. The entire material manifestation began from sound, and sound can also end material entanglement if it has a particular potency. The particular sound capable of doing this is the transcendental vibration. Hare Krishna. Our entanglement in material affairs has begun from material sound. Now we must purify that sound in spiritual understanding. What points did Srila Prabhupada make here? Anybody want to try? It's all right if you get it wrong. Anybody want to try?
So started with the sound. So it all started with the sound and we can end it.
It started with the sound and ended with the sound. Good. There's two it's here. What's the first it? What's the first it that started with the sound and can end with the sound?
Material existence.
What's material existence? Yes, there's two of them. Shall I read it again? Yeah? Okay. The entire material manifestation began from sound, and sound can also end material entanglement if it has a particular potency. Our entanglement in material affairs has begun from material sound. Now we must purify that sound in spiritual understanding. So what's the two? What are the two? Huh? Whose entanglement? Our entanglement. So that's on a personal level. What's the other one? The whole big thing. So the material cosmos, all the universes began from sound and can be dissolved by sound. And our personal entanglement comes from sound and can be dissolved by sound. And Prabhupada's explaining a little bit on the cosmic scale. From sound, the ether became manifested, that the air became manifested from ether. He says how the ethereal sky comes from sound, how the air comes from sky, how fire comes from air will be explained later on. Sound is the cause of the sky, and sky is the cause of the ear. So you have sound makes space, from space makes touch, from touch makes air, from air makes form, from form makes fire or radiant energy, from that makes taste, from that makes water or the liquid form of matter, from that makes smell, from that makes earth or the solid form of matter. All right. We got entangled by sound, we can get liberated by sound. That's the main point. Everybody got that point?
Yes.
Okay, it's going to be important. Keep it. Note it. Yes. All right. Now we're going to go to the 11th canto. You also don't have this. I've listed the verses on your paper, but I didn't quote them because then I'd give you too many papers, and I don't want to give you too many papers. So if we're looking at 11, 12, 17, so Krishna has explained to Uddhava many processes of liberation, and Uddhava says, what's the best? So this is Krishna's answer. My dear Uddhava, the Supreme Lord gives life to every living being and is situated within the heart, along with the life air and primal sound vibration. The Supreme Lord then assumes a gross form as the various sounds of the Vedas, composed of short and long vowels and consonants of different intonations. Does that sound like an answer? That sounds like an answer to you? So if I said to you, what's the best spiritual process? And you said, the Supreme Lord gives life to every living entity and is situated within the heart, along with the life air and the primal sound vibration. The Supreme Lord also assumes a gross form as the various sounds of the Vedas, composed of short and long vowels and consonants of different intonations. Would you feel your question was answered? No. It was, but you probably would be a little confused. So this is the BBT purport. Uddhava was bewildered and doubtful because Lord Krishna explained many different processes, such as devotional service, speculative knowledge, renunciation, mystic yoga, austerities, pious duties, and so on. And Krishna is giving this answer. So this is the BBT purport here is pulling from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Lord Krishna became manifest from the mouth of Lord Brahma in the form of the Vedas. The word Vivara Prasuti in this verse also indicates that the Lord is manifest in the Adhati chakras situated within the body of Lord Brahma. The word Goshena means subtle sound, and Guyam Pravista also indicates that Lord Krishna enters within the Adhata chakra. The Lord can further be perceived within other chakras, such as the Manipuraka chakra, located around the navel, and the Visuddhi chakra. So this is how Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on this verse. Interesting, yes? And Krishna then gives Uddhava the process for realizing this sound in the next verse. So this is text 18. He says, when sticks of kindling wood are vigorous, don't worry, we'll get this all sorted. But I want you to right now just I know it's a little technical, but it'll all come together, I promise you. And it's going to give you a real key in your chanting. I promise you that. But keep track of these things. Don't space out. Okay? I need you to kind of hold this. Can you do that? Yeah. It's a weekend. You should be able to do it. Well, on weekday evenings, I always figure people would space out. Next one. When sticks of kindling wood are vigorously rubbed together, heat is produced by contact with air, and a spark of fire appears. Once the fire is kindled, ghee is added, and the fire blazes. Similarly, I become manifest in the sound vibration of the Vedas. Would you like Krishna to manifest in your chanting? Yes. All right. He's telling you how. He's giving a metaphor. When sticks of kindling wood are vigorously rubbed together, heat is produced by contact with air, and a spark of fire emerges. Once the fire is kindled, ghee is added, and the fire blazes. Similarly, I become manifest in the sound vibration of the Vedas. Okay. Don't worry, we'll explain all this. Don't worry, we'll bring it all together. We're going to look now at Bhagavatam 4:23-16. Here, Srila Prabhupada says, the word yata stanam vihagasaga indicate that one should know the process of creation. Did we just talk about the process of creation? Sound, space, touch, air, etc. Prabhupada said we should know the process of creation. Now you ready? Listen, please listen carefully. And should meditate upon the creative process inversely, and thus become free from material contamination. All right, let's put this all together and make sense out of all this. So when the material creation is created, it's explained that Krishna is entering into the chakras of Lord Brahma. According to Srila Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's purport on 11/12/17. So Krishna enters into the Muladhara. Do you all know where the Muladhara chakra is? At the base of the spine. So he's entering into this Mula. Mula means root. He's entering into the Muladhara chakra. And you have here in your chart. You have this chart for reference. He enters into the Mula chakra at the base as the primal sound. And then he's moving up through the Manipuri chakra. Manipuri chakra is here, in the abdomen, up to the Visuddha chakra in the throat, and then out of the mouth. And when the Lord comes out of the mouth of Brahma, as the sound of the Vedas, that allows Lord Brahma to create. He's creating with what? Sound. He's creating with sound. Now remember Prabhupada said there were two creations that happened with sound, the big creation, and then what was the other one? Our entanglement. How does our entanglement start? Listen. The soul has a voice. And the voice of the soul is, I want to be the independent enjoyer. I no longer want to enjoy, Prabhupada will say, through Krishna. I want to enjoy separately. The way the pure soul enjoys is by bringing together the Lord and his Ladini Shakti, which then also nourishes the devotee, as Krishnadas Kaviraj so nicely explains, and we enjoy through Krishna. Just like the parts of our body enjoy through feeding the stomach. Right? So I give this example. We want our hands to be hydrated, right? Everybody would like their hand to be hydrated. It won't work properly unless it's hydrated. How am I going to hydrate my hand? I'm going to use my hand to take water to put in my mouth. Am I correct? Suppose I thought, well, I'm going to hydrate my hand directly by sticking it in water. Suppose I just put my hand in water. What would happen if I leave my hand in water?
The opposite.
The opposite. It's going to dry out. Yes? You all soaked in water too long? Right? Remember when you were a kid and you soaked in water too long? You're like, why do my hands look like raisins? You would think that being in water would be moisturizing, but actually submerging ourselves in water is drying. So we are meant to be nourished through Krishna, Prabhupada said. But the soul can have a desire, well, I want to drink water directly through my hand. I want to see if I can enjoy without going through Krishna. Can I get this pleasure potency for myself, like Ravana who wants to kidnap Sita and enjoy her himself, rather than Hanuman who wants to bring Sita and Ram together. So this is my first call of the soul. I want to enjoy separately. I want to see if I can do it. I want to try it. All right, but that's very vague, correct? That's very vague. There has to be some specificity to it. So if you want to start any kind of project, any kind of business, what's the first thing you have to have? Before you have a plan.
An idea.
An idea, a vision. You have to have a vision. So the voice of the soul, or the sound of Krishna in the Muladhara of Lord Brahma, is called Paravak. Para means other. Literally means other. And we often take it to mean supreme or spiritual. So there's the voice of the soul at the root. I want to enjoy separately from Krishna. Then at the next chakra, the Muladhara, not the Muladhara, the Manipuri chakra, is what's called the Pasyanti Vak. Does anyone know what the word Pasyanti means? We sing it every morning when we greet the deities.
Looking, singing.
Excellent. Looking and seeing. Vision. You have a vision. That's the covering of material intelligence. A vision. How do I want to enjoy? I want to enjoy this way. I want to enjoy that way. I want to enjoy. It has to have some specificity. Does this make sense to everybody? If someone just comes to you and says, I want to have fun today, you would say, well, there's millions of ways to have fun. Do you have some specificity in mind? Yeah? So a vision. That's the voice of Pasyantivak. And it can literally be a vision. It can literally be a picture. It does mean to see. Okay, then you need, after a vision, then you need, what did you say? A plan. That's the Majjhima Vak. This is the voice of the mind. Well, I have a vision, I want to become a medical doctor. That's my vision. Then I'm going to make a plan. I'll study biology and chemistry. I'll apply to medical school. I'll study hard. I won't go out to party. Right? You make a plan. Everybody clear? Right? I want to make £1 million, and you make a plan. I'm going to start this thing, but this is the specifics of what you're going to do. And then that's the voice of the Majjhima Vak in the Visuddha chakra, and then it actually comes out of the mouth as gross sound. And gross sound has to do with our actual actions to put that plan into place, to fulfill the vision, and try to enjoy separately from Krishna. And there we create our own little universes, we're like our own little Brahmas, whether our universe is one little room, or whether our universe is a flat, or whether our universe is a mansion. We're creating our own little universes in this way. So from the Paravak, and you have this on your paper so you don't have to remember all of it, from the Paravak, the Pasyanti Vak, to the Majjhima Vak, to what's called the Vaikari Vak. The Vaikari Vak is the audible sound. This is going to be hard. Do any of you remember that thing I said from the 4th canto purport? Prabhupada said we have to know the process of creation and meditate on it. Does anyone remember the word? Inversely. Excellent. That was a hard question. And that was one of those, I'd be surprised if even 3 people knew the answer to that. So I remember when GPS first came out. I remember my father got one of the first GPS units in his car. He told me it cost him $2,000. And they called it Rosie. He gave it a name. So they were so excited. I remember, my father and stepmother were there. They were so excited showing me the sat-nav and how they could program it. Probably actually didn't work with a satellite in those days. It probably just had downloaded maps inside of it. And you programmed it to go someplace. And it was voice activated. I remember it was voice activated. And so you went to your destination, you did what you wanted to do, and then you said, Rosie, home. Of course, now we all have one of those, right? So I usually borrow my daughter's car, and if I go someplace, I just push a button and I go, navigate home. Some of you have cars like that? Yes? When you go home, it's doing the directions, how? Inversely. If you turned right to get out of your house, you're going to turn left to go back. The steps you went through to get from your home to your destination, when you want to go back home, you go back home how? Inversely. Everybody following? Okay. So first of all, what we do is we take spiritual sound. We take sound that is the opposite of I want to enjoy separately from Krishna. And the spiritual sound that we are recommended to take at this point is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare. Which Prabhupada says that we chant this in the mood of, my dear Lord, O energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service. That is the opposite of the mood of rebellion. It is innately, inherently spiritual sound. It is, if you want to go to a very deep esoteric level, the uniting of the Lord with his pleasure energy. Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. Again, our problem was that rather than trying to enjoy in our natural state by uniting the Lord with his energy of pleasure, we decided that we wanted to kidnap the energy of pleasure and enjoy it ourselves directly. Ravana versus Hanuman. The mantra is a mantra of uniting the Lord and his pleasure energy, and doing that in the mood of a servant. That I am using my mind, I'm using my body as the kunja. I'm using it as the place where the Lord and his energy can unite. As Prabhupada would say, that the Lord and his internal energy are doing what? What are they doing when we're chanting? Dancing on our tongue. So we're using our tongue, our heart. It's funny. So I was with one of my really good friends here in London, Chidi Shakti, and we were chanting japa yesterday, and I was saying to her, you know, with my broken hand, I have to chant at least some of my rounds with my left hand. And she said, why are you chanting with your hands? You're supposed to be chanting with your mouth and your head and your heart. I said, well, hopefully my whole body can be chanting. So we're trying to make our gross and subtle body a place where we're doing the reverse of our material contamination. All right? Everybody got that? Okay. So inversely means I'm at my destination. I'm at the Maya Mall. And I want to go to Goloka Vrindavan. All right? But I'm starting at the Maya Mall. That's where I'm starting. I'm starting with the manifestation of material desires through Vaikari Vak, through the gross voice. So my chanting is going to start with the gross voice. So with my gross voice, it's going to be saying Hare Krishna, with my Vaikari Vak, but my Majjhima Vak, my mind, is still going to be saying, I want to enjoy separately from Krishna. And my vision, my Pasyanti Vak voice is going, I have this vision of how I'm going to enjoy separately from Krishna. And the Paravak, the voice of the soul, is still going, I want to enjoy separately from Krishna. Now, generally, unless you're a very unusual person, you are going to start your chanting with Vaikari Vak only. That is offensive chanting. However, that's where we start, because we are offenders. So naturally, our first chanting is going to be offensive. That is okay. It's okay. Devotee was driving me back to the manor from a program yesterday, and she says, is it okay to be where I am? And I said, it has to be okay to be where you are, because that's where you are. I said, it's like asking a question, is it okay to be on this part of the road right now? I said, that's where the car is right now. I said, now what's not okay is to be complacent and to park the car there and just get out and say, well, this is where I am. That's not okay. I said, you got to keep the wheels rolling. You understand? You got to keep the wheels rolling. But it's okay to be where you are at the present, because it has to be okay, because there's absolutely no point whatsoever in hallucinating that you're not there. That doesn't work. So that's fine at the beginning to start with Vaikari Vak. There's no problem with that whatsoever. Now there's a problem if we intentionally stay on that level. Just like if my driver yesterday had just said, well, we're just going to pull over here on the side of the road at 8:30 at night, because this is where we are. We're just going to be okay with where we are. We're just going to accept ourselves for who and what we are. And here we are. And I'd be like, but I wanted to get back to the manor and go to sleep. It's going to be a problem. I'm going to get cold. I'm going to get hungry, right? If we, please listen carefully, if we intentionally stay at the level of Vaikari Vak, if we do not make an effort to involve our mind, our intelligence, and ultimately our self in our chanting, Srila Jiva Goswami, in the Bhakti Sandarbha from Anu 153 onwards, talks about what kind of problems we're going to have. Religions get kind of a bad a bad reputation in the world. That people are religious, but they do all kinds of nasty things. Yes? Even in our Hare Krishna movement, we have people who've done nasty things, and I'm sure that will continue forever. That there'll always be some people who do nasty things. And people will say, well, if you're really religious, why are you doing nasty things? A person can be externally practicing a system of spirituality and religion. But if it's all just on the Vaikari Vak platform, there's no internal change. Prabhupada will say, if you just want to keep things as they are, then you won't progress. Again, you want to get out of the car and park by the side of the road, you're never going to get to your destination. then the removal of our anartas will never take place. If the cheating guy just says, I love you, but doesn't actually change internally, the relationship cannot be restored. It won't happen. And it's people who are functioning on that platform. Again, we're not talking about beginners. It's fine when you're a beginner to be a beginner. No problem. But we're talking about people who intentionally keep themselves at that platform. They end up looking externally like serious practitioners of religion, but not having a purified heart. Srila Jiva Goswami says, again, this is Bhakti Sandarbha from 153 onward, he says one will become crooked. One will become faithless. Because, when you first chant, even if you chant just on the level of Vaikaric Vow, Krishna does get excited. Like the cheating spouse comes home and the wife does, she will get excited. Wow, he's come back. There'll be some initial excitement. So Krishna also seems to get initially excited. And sometimes in the beginning, and many spiritual or religious thinkers in many religions have noticed this. A person first converts to a religion or really dedicates himself. And, temptations are easy to conquer and everything is just sweet. I was teaching a class on forgiveness yesterday, and I said how when I first started analyzing what does it mean to be forgiving, and soon after that I had a chance to practice it because somebody offended me. And then I just went through a mechanical process of forgiveness that I didn't really feel. Just in my mind saying, maybe I'm the one who's wrong, Krishna's protecting me, maybe the person who's offending me going through joy. I didn't feel any of it, but I thought I'm just doing it. And Krishna was so pleased. I was overwhelmed. I was just flooded with peace. And I'm like, wow, Krishna's so happy even when I'm just doing it mechanically. But after a while, Krishna started saying, stop doing it mechanically, lady, get it together. So if we continue just doing mechanical chanting, we'll become faithless because we'll have no taste. And we'll think, Krishna really isn't in his name. This is all imaginary. We'll start committing even more and more offenses. And then we'll start getting attached to things that destroy faith in Krishna to justify our faithlessness. We'll start watching things, hearing things, hanging out with people who will shake our faith. And that way we can see, I knew that it wasn't. Yes? We'll become slack in the process. Maybe some days we won't finish our rounds, we won't make them up. Right? Maybe we'll chant some other kinds of weird chanting, which I'm not going to get into that, but that I see people do. Somehow we'll have some kind of slackness. The kind of things I usually see with devotees is they'll intentionally space out when chanting. They'll chant while watching a TV show, or they'll stop being strict about what they eat. They'll start just eating garbage from shops. Maybe they'll stop following Kadasi. Maybe they'll start compromising. And these compromises may look very small at first. And if you just look at the compromise right before it, it looks very small. If you look at where you started from, it looks like a big thing. And this last one is fascinating. Pride in devotional achievements and accomplishments. So I one time went to visit a temple I hadn't been before, and there was this one big brahmachari came up to me and said, I'm the so-and-so of the temple, this is my position, and I've done this. And he started listing his whole CV for me. And I was thinking, I wasn't hiring you, why do I care about this? I was just standing there trying to be polite. And then he looked at me and he said, so what department are you in? And I'm like, I don't know, troublemaking department. When I used to teach Raghunath, and I still do sometimes, Raghunath Das Goswami's Sri Manashiksha, and I would talk about this process of anartha nivritti and really going deep in our practices. And some people would argue with me. I even had some leaders argue with me and saying, we just have to chant our rounds and follow the principles. We don't really have to go deep. And you know what else they would do after that? They would start listing their external accomplishments. The same thing, they'd start giving me their CV. And often they would list their tapasyas. I found this quite fascinating. You know, well, I did this austerity to distribute books, and this austerity to distribute prasadam, and this austerity for this festival, and I always let the sannyasi stay in my home, you know, and then I sleep on the floor in the temple. One of these people was telling me that. I thought, yeah, that's what Jiva Goswami talks about. If we intentionally stay on Vaikari Vak, if we don't move further, we'll become devious, we'll lose our faith, we'll get attached to things that damage our faith. We may become slack even in the mechanical, external aspects of the process. And how will we convince ourselves that we're still good devotees? How will we convince ourselves that we're still making advancement? We'll look at externals. How many sticks of incense have I waved? How many books have I distributed? How much money have I collected? How many temples have I built? How much fasting have I done? How many floors have I slept on? We'll look at those kind of things as a way to sort of pacify ourselves. Yes? Okay? So we want to move to the next level. So if we want to move to the next level, that means we're going to move to the level of Majjhima, where we engage the mind, where the mind is chanting along with the mouth. Where the mind is chanting along with the mouth. So do you remember about the rubbing the sticks together thing? You remember about that one? Yeah? Okay, so what did the Lord tell Uddhava again? That one? When sticks of kindling wood are vigorously rubbed together, heat is produced by contact with air and a spark of fire appears. Once the fire is kindled, ghee is added and the fire blazes. Similarly, I become manifest in the sound vibration of the Vedas. So chanting on Vaikari Vyak is like rubbing sticks together to make a fire, which we don't generally do anymore. So this metaphor may not work so well for us. But if you were like in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or stuff and you did that kind of thing. But like if you're rubbing sticks together, so first what are you going to get? Anybody know what you're going to get first, by the way?
Sparks.
Before sparks.
Heat.
Heat. Actually, before heat even, you're going to get some smoke. First you're going to get some smoke. Then you're going to get heat. But before you get heat, you're going to be working hard, yeah? You may be perspiring, and it doesn't seem like you're getting anywhere. Chanting on Vaikari Vak is like that. I mean, Krishna may get excited in the beginning and reveal something far beyond our qualifications in bhakti. That's quite common. And then we might think, oh, I'm almost a pure devotee. But usually chanting of Vaikari Vak is hard work. Because our other voices are all screaming, I want to enjoy, I want to enjoy, I want to enjoy, I want to enjoy. It's kind of like trying to cook when you have a 2-year-old there going, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. Okay. So the Majjhima Vak, the Pasyanti Vak, the Paravak is all going, I want to be a materialist. Right? So it's hard work. We can almost feel like we're battling our mind. You know, it's difficult. But then there's some heat. This heat is analogous to the Majjhima Vak chanting, to the mind starting to chant. If the mind is chanting along with the voice, then you're going to feel some heat. You're going to feel some connection. Now still the Pasyanti Vak and the Paravak are going, I want to be a materialistic person and enjoy. But at least you got the mind on board. There's some heat. And we're going to go to some specific meditations which you also received that we'll look at very soon. Now when there's heat, the next step, did you remember from what Krishna told Uddhava? After there's heat, sometimes you get a spark. The spark is the waking up of the Pasyanti Vak. The vision. Right? And if you look here again at your chart, Vaikari Vak is the energy of Kriya, of action. Majjhima is the energy of Gyan. And Pasyanti is the energy of Ichcha, desire. In Bhagavad Gita, 12th chapter, Krishna says, think of me with love. If you can't do that, then do Abhyas Yoga, which is the same as Sadhana Bhakti. 12.9, Bhagavad Gita 12.9. And he says, why do you do Abhyas Yoga? To awaken Icha, to awaken a desire. Desire is on the level of Pasyanti Bhak. Remember, we're talking about if you want to start a business, you want to start a project, first thing you have is a vision. You have a desire. You have a desire. I'm going to have a chain of fitness stores all over London. You have a vision. Clear? Clear? That's on the level of desire. And remember, we're doing this, right? What did it say in the 4th canto? We're doing this inversely. We're starting chanting with Vaikari Vak, because that's where we start out. Then we're going inversely. We're going down to the level of mind, which is the level of planning and knowledge. That's the heat. When you're chanting on the level of mind, you will feel something. You go, oh, this chanting is something special. And if you can maintain that for some time, there'll be a spark. That spark is the Pasyanti Vak coming on board. The Pasyanti Vak becoming attracted and saying, I want that. Now, at a certain point, this involvement of the Pasyanti Vak means some intuitive understanding of one's eternal swarup, one's eternal relationship with Krishna. It may be, I want that not just in a general way, but I want that in a more specific way. I want to see Krishna as my child. I want to see Krishna as my friend. I want to see Krishna as my beloved. I want to be a bee on Krishna's garland. There's a spark. Now, often when we're chanting and there's a spark of desire, which may be a general desire, oh, I really want to love Krishna. Or maybe at higher stages it may be a specific desire. Often we don't know what to do with it. There we are chanting at the level of Majjhima Vak. Our mind is in sync with our voice, and the Pasyanti Vak all of a sudden becomes attracted. There's a spark, and we might go, oh, there's a spark. Look at that. What's gone? But what does Krishna say? When there's a spark, you should pour ghee. Nourish, Prabhupada would say, fan the spark. Nourish the spark. And if you nourish the spark, then the spark's going to turn into a fire. At this point, the Paravak wakes up and is engaged in the chanting, and you're actually chanting on the level of soul. And at this point, there's a gradual unfoldment of our eternal relationship with Krishna. We have done the creation inversely. Does everybody follow how we've done the creation inversely? We started at Vaikari Vak, went to Majjhima Vak, went to Pasyanti Vak, and then went to Hara Vak. When we're chanting on the level of Majjhima Vak and Pasyanti Vak, that's the clearing stage. When we're finally chanting at Hara Vak, that's the pure stage of chanting. And in this way, we undo the process of our entanglement. Now, when you light a fire using wood, what does the fire do to the wood? It burns up the wood. When we use our gross and subtle body, Vaikari Vak is the gross body, Majjhima Vak and Pasyanti Vak are the subtle body. When we use our gross and subtle body in bhakti, that burns up our gross and subtle body. Liberation is not just dying, because then we just take a birth again. Liberation is liberation from the subtle body. The gross and subtle manifestations of our desire to enjoy independently from Krishna are gone. Now, does that mean that you immediately die? Not necessarily. But the energy of the spirit then pervades one's body and mind. Therefore, we say the great devotees have a spiritualized body. Which is why often for great devotees we don't cremate the body. This concept is seen not only in our own tradition. Say in Catholicism there are saints that it's said that their body has never decomposed. People will go to the tomb of their body for healing. There's some Catholic saints where like there's this perfume liquid coming out of their dead body after hundreds and hundreds of years, and people go there and get physical healing, they get spiritual benefit. Look, even on a material level, somebody, if you're overcome by tamagun, is that obvious in your body? And if someone's in sattvagun, what does Krishna say? All the gates of the body are illuminated. So we're going to be teaching career dharma, which is the varna part of varnashram. And we've just had a session in Radhadesh and a session at the Bhakti Center in New York where we were training devotees to learn how to be career dharma coaches. How to help people understand what is their varna, what is their nature, what is their, as Prabhupada will say, psychophysical nature, what is their temperament. And this very fascinating thing occurs. So we're doing consultation with somebody, and we're helping them, we're asking them questions, and helping them to discover. We're not telling them who they are, very important, we're not telling them who they are, we're helping them discover who they are. I remember one of the people who was training said, how do we know when to stop? When we know what they are? I said, no, when they know what they are. And I taught them how to recognize the physiological symptoms. And once you know what to look for, you see that when a person just contemplates working according to their nature, their whole physiology changes. They haven't even started doing it yet. They're just sitting at the chair in the front of the room, and we're just coaching them, we're just guiding them, asking them questions, and they just discover, oh, I should. And you see their muscles relax, their face brightens, their eyes brighten. It's amazing. They often look younger. One person I was coaching some years ago on Zoom, I remember when I first saw her, I thought, oh, this poor lady, she's really unattractive. It was actually hard to look at her. She was that unattractive. I thought, this poor lady. Once she realized her nature, I mean, she didn't look like she was going to be on the cover of Vogue, but she completely changed. She actually looked like at least average. And it was amazing. I'm like, how did that happen? That's just thinking about being in the right place materially for Krishna. Prabhupada talks about if we just desire to do devotional service, practically we're liberated, even if we haven't done it yet. Amazing. And I was talking to the co-author of our book, Dr. Ruchira Datta, about this phenomena. And it's so amazing, like all the coaches in training, we almost got addicted to it. You know, seeing these people's transformation. And the volunteers who came to receive coaching, for that session, they'd all come at the beginning. And even after they receive their coaching, they usually stay. And they would watch this transformation happen. And everybody was saying, wow, this is amazing. So I was talking to my co-author about this. She said, yeah, a lot of the problem with Kali Yuga is people are in the wrong place. They're not acting according to their nature, so they're all like dark. I'm just working for money. And even devotees, I'm just doing a job for money, so I have time to change. My point is that our body changes. That's my point. Our body changes. Even materially, when we're doing the work we're supposed to do in the world, when we're doing the work that conforms to our nature, if we're just thinking about doing the work that conforms to our nature, our physiology changes. And it's dramatic, and anyone who's trained to see it can see it. Once you know what to look for, you just see this transformation. Prabhupada talked about how his disciples were bright-faced, right? If that's true when we're talking about our varna, which has to do with our psychophysical nature, how much more true this is of bhakti. when all of our voices are absorbed in the holy name of the Lord, our physiology changes. The cells of our bodies change. Our physical and body, gross and subtle, has really been dissolved. We're operating on a different platform. And again, even materially, if you walk into a room where people have just been arguing, you can feel it, yeah? And if you walk into a place where people are happy, you can feel it. When you're in the presence of a person who has spiritualized their subtle and gross bodies, you can feel it. I mean, I remember when we first met Srila Prabhupada, 1974, so I was initiated in the mail, I hadn't met Prabhupada. When we first met him, my husband, my father, and I, and some other devotees, we were in the room with him for about half an hour. And when we left, my father looked at me and said, I know now why you've joined this movement. This is a genuine holy man. And I never asked him. I never asked him. On what basis did you conclude that? You know? At the time, I was just like, oh, my father likes Prabhupada. And that was kind of the end of that. But just from being in Prabhupada's presence, I remember when my father went on a morning walk with Prabhupada in Philadelphia, and he came back and said, I said, how was it? He said, well, I couldn't hear what he was saying, but it was the best time I've ever had in my life. He said it was the highlight of my whole life. So once we're chanting at the level of Paravak regularly, steadily, then that fire actually burns the very wood that created it. Think about this. How wonderful is bhakti? We are using the body and the mind, which are products of our attachment. We are using those to again inverse the process of creation and destroy their own attachment. All right. Let's look now. You have a handout. I don't know what it's called, but it looks like this. I really apologize for the people in the back who can't see me. But I didn't have the facility to stand. I would have had to have a higher something to stand on. Anyway, it's a long time to stand like that. I try to stand for things like this where people are all on the same level. And by the way, I do see that you're there in the back, Suka. It's nice to have you here. You're visiting from Hungary? Nice to see you. So all of you, I've been appreciating your presence here this whole time, although I haven't acknowledged you until now. So all of you have this? Yes? So we're not going to go through all of these, but these are some very, very nice quotes where Prabhupada is talking about how we can involve the mind and ultimately desire in our chanting. And I'd like you to notice the dates of some of these. So this is a letter in 1967. Somehow this was cut off on the top of my page. But I know the quote here. It says, oh, maybe I'll look it up. I don't have the whole thing. I have to scroll through a whole bunch of stuff here. But I'd like to read the whole thing. Yes. Okay. That's not right. Sorry, just give me a moment because I do want to read the whole quote and it's cut off here on my paper.
You want that?
Yes, I'll find it here in a minute. Or I won't. Okay, so the first one is 1975. So this is practice. First of all, think of the deity. First of all, think of the lotus feet, then the knees, then the eyes, then the belly, then the chest. In this way, as you become practiced, then go further advanced. In whatever condition you are, you will be able to meditate on Krishna. That is the highest perfection of life. Satatam kirtayanto mam, satatam chintayanto mam. If you always think of Krishna, always chant. Chanting is also meditation. As soon as you chant, you immediately remember Krishna, his form, his name, his quality, his pastimes. So where is the difficulty? Gita 8.8 purport. Yoga practice is meditation on the super soul within. Similarly, by chanting Hare Krishna, one fixes his mind always on the Supreme Lord. The mind is fickle, and therefore it is necessary to engage the mind by force to think of Krishna. From this letter to Balabi, 1967. 1967. Were these mature devotees? No. While chanting Hare Krishna, you should always feel the presence of Krishna in person. And as soon as you remember Krishna in person, you can remember also about his talks with Arjuna. Now it's interesting Prabhupada says that. What do you think about 1967? Did Krishna book exist? No. Did Nectar Devotion exist? No. What were the only books? Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. That was all. So when Prabhupada's going to say, you could think about his talks with Arjuna because that's what they knew. If you cannot remember Krishna in person, you should try to attentively hear the word Krishna Hare as you go on chanting. Now, I have heard many people say that you should not try to think of Krishna while you chant. Now, I have many responses to this. First of all, Srila Rupa Goswami defines sadhana bhakti as always thinking of Krishna. I also would find it absolutely absurd if I should think about Krishna all day except when I'm chanting. Yes? Also, we are allowed to chant japa in the temple room in front of the deities and we don't have to close our eyes. Or even kirtan, putting aside japa, even kirtan, you're allowed to look at the deities while you're chanting in kirtan. No one says, well, that you can't do that. Now, there are these times when there was a conversation that Prabhupada had with one young man, and it said, Prabhupada, what should I do with my mind when I chant? And Prabhupada said, just chant and hear what is the question of mind. And people have often taken that as a general instruction for everybody. I'd like to point out first that that was a conversation. Conversations are the least authoritative source because who am I talking to? I'm talking to a specific person. There may be all kinds of things going on, all references and contexts that I can't access. Also, suppose I say to you, when I talk to you, what should I do with my mind? That's a very peculiar question. Isn't that a peculiar question? When I'm talking to you, Narada Rishi, what should I do with my mind? You'd think, was this person crazy? And you might say, well, just try to hear what we're saying. It just seems like such a silly question. So Prabhupada's responding to that particular person who was asking an absurd question. Yes? And he's giving it as a second. Feel the presence of Krishna, remember Krishna's pastimes. If you can't do that, just hear. Now I also realize that this just hear the sound is applicable to people who can't think of Krishna because they don't know anything about him. I was once driving back from a program in Auckland, New Zealand, and we were in the car with some person who'd come to a program for the very first time. And he's talking about, he thought he was talking about Krishna, but he was talking about some, who knows what he was talking about. It was just some imagination thing of his. And I thought, if I tell him to think about Krishna, I don't know what he's going to think about. So, I'm just going to tell him just here. Okay, this is Denver, 1975. It's very easy. You simply chant and remember Krishna. It is not at all difficult. Here you are seeing the deity of Krishna. So while chanting, if you remember this deity, is it very difficult? Letter to Shamasundar, 1970. Regarding how George can continue his meditation, that meditation may be done by keeping one picture of Krishna, keeping his mind concentrated on the picture of Krishna and softly chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra as long as he likes. That will complete both his meditation and Krishna consciousness. Okay, here's one of my favorites. I was introduced to this quote by Satchidananda Maharaj. This is a lecture in Geneva on 1/13/10 in 1974, and you have all these quotes. I'm not reading every word of every quote. I'm giving it to you so you can peruse it on your own. The Hare Krishna mantra chanting, this is again one of my favorites. The Hare Krishna mantra chanting means keeping Krishna always within your heart. It is not expensive at all. You haven't got to make a very exalted throne for Krishna. You can imagine. What did Prabhupada say? You can, what was the verb? What was the verb? Thank you. That in my heart I have placed now a very diamond throne and Krishna is sitting. That is accepted. It is. Actually, it becomes. Even within the mind, you think that I have kept one diamond throne, very costly throne, because Krishna is coming. He will sit down there. That is not false. That is a fact. Prabhupada's telling us to imagine, and then he says it's not false, it's a fact. So you create such situation within your heart. Now Krishna is seated. Let me wash his feet with the Ganges water, Yamuna water. Now change his dress to a first-class costly garments. Then I give him for eating. You can simply think of this. This is meditation. It is so nice thing. Anywhere you can sit down and think that Krishna is sitting in your heart and you are receiving in so nice way. They are not false. They are also fact. It is so easy. So here is if you simply carry Krishna within your heart, always in very devotional service, exalted devotional service, and chant Hare Krishna and think of Krishna wherever you go, you will purify the whole place. And there's a lovely story I don't have time to tell in depth. There's the story that Prabhupada mentions in the Nectar of Devotion, and he mentions it again in the 7th canto, in the verse where Prahlad is talking about the 9 processes, about the Brahmana who always meditated on doing deity service in his mind, and for that went to Vaikuntha. There's a famous story in South India of this poor man who was a devotee of Lord Shiva. And he heard that he could meditate like this, so he meditated. It's a very, very famous, well-known story in South India, and someday I'll remember the name of the person and the name of the town. So he meditated on building a temple for Lord Shiva, and for many years, he did this for many, many years. And he meditated on every aspect of the construction. Meanwhile, in a neighboring town, the king was actually building a temple for Lord Shiva physically. And he completed this temple, and then he was going to install the deity, and he picked a day, and then he had a dream. And Lord Shiva came to him in the dream and said, I'm very sorry, you cannot install me in your temple on that day, because on that day I'm going to be installed at the temple of so-and-so in this other town. And the king's like, oh, I didn't know somebody in that town was also building a Shiva temple. So he took his red canoe and he went to that town, and he's asking everybody, where is this person, where is that person? And he finds this poor guy. He doesn't see any temple. He said, Lord Shiva told me you were installing him in the temple on this day, and so he couldn't come to my temple. And then the poor man told him, well, I was just doing it all in my mind. Okay, this is from a lecture in 1973. Prabhupada says, as soon as you utter the name of Krishna, you remember Krishna's form, Krishna's pastimes, everything. Purport of 4844, by chanting the Hare Krishna, the Lord, which is not different from this somehow got messed up, which is not different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, naturally his mind becomes absorbed in thoughts of the Lord. Now this is another lecture from 1967. I want you again to remember it's 1967. So Prabhupada must have had, or else either the date's wrong, either it's actually 1970, or Prabhupada is referring to manuscripts of Krishna book. Right? And this is heavy. When I first heard this, I was like, whoa. Here Prabhupada's defining what is attentive and inattentive chanting. As soon as you chant Hare Krishna, immediately you remember Krishna, Krishna's form, Krishna's fighting, Krishna is sitting on the chariot of Arjuna. If you read Krishna book always, some of his pastimes will immediately appear in my brain, immediately, as soon as you chant Hare Krishna. That is required. Smaranam, automatically, as soon as you chant Hare Krishna. If you mechanically chant, thinking of something nonsense, then it will be useless. Prabhupada said that very hard. He said, then it will be useless. And then there's a long pause. And then he says, it will take time. Like, but if there is immediate remembrance of Krishna, we are hearing about Krishna, so many things, reading about Krishna. Why not remembrance? That means inattention. So Prabhupada is saying, if when we're chanting, we're not remembering Krishna, that is inattentive chanting. That means deficient in Krishna consciousness. We should immediately, as soon as we chant Hare Krishna, immediately, at least we should remember the picture that Krishna is so kind that he has become a chariot driver, his devotee Arjuna, and he has given his instruction Bhagavad Gita. Again, this is early in the movement. Or Krishna is playing in the forest along with his cowherd boys, friends, eating very nicely on the bank of the Yamuna, and some demon came, and he is killing. And the boys are, I mean to say, encouraging him with claps. This enjoyment is going on. What is the difficulty in remembering Krishna? What for this Krishna book is there? You read it and remember it. That will make you keep you in Krishna consciousness. So I'm not going to read any more. You have them for yourself. Again, when we start chanting, when we're beginners, if we're just chanting on the level of gross sound, that's expected. We have to start where we are. But our business is to involve the mental voice, which is the heat, the intelligent voice, which is the spark, and ultimately the spiritual voice, which is a blazing fire. And then we will discover that although on the immediate material sensory platform, chanting japa is not like eating a prasadam cheesecake. It's not like being in a beautifully musical kirtan. It's not like that. That we will actually find that the holy name is so sweet. And one devotee came to me many years ago and said, the holy name is actually sweet. That's not a metaphor. It's actually sweet. We want to be experiencing our chanting with spiritual senses. I just want to circle back to the beginning. Celebrate your wins. Don't beat yourself up over your struggles. Beating yourself up over your struggles will actually impede your process. The baby learning how to walk does not cry. They don't even cry usually. Yes? They're so excited that they're finally standing and taking a few steps. They fall, they get a bruise, my dear friends. They don't usually cry. Sometimes, but usually not. They're so absorbed in celebrating the wins that the difficulty in the struggle becomes like nothing. Celebrate your wins. Did you chant with Madhyama Vak for half a round, for 3 mantras? Celebrate it. Did you get a spark for a moment? Celebrate it. And how do we pour ghee on the spark? By hearing and absorbing ourselves in the pastimes of the Lord. When the spark of desire comes, don't be afraid of it. Go deep into it. Cultivate it. Pour ghee on it. You want the fire to blaze. I think sometimes we're also afraid of becoming advanced devotees. I was thinking the other day how, we hear that when we actually become advanced devotees, we will not experience the pains or pleasures of this world. And I was thinking, well, to some extent that sounds unattractive. I won't experience material pleasures anymore. If we tell that to people, they'll think, well, when I'm eating, then I won't experience the material taste. But suppose when you're eating, you're experiencing that this is the taste of God. Like Lord Chaitanya said, when I eat this prasadam, I'm tasting God's saliva. This is how God tastes. Does that include all the pleasure of all the material tastes of salty, sweet, sour, pungent, and astringent? Akila rasa rita murti. I would be experiencing all rasa. What would I care whether or not I have some absorption in how the mango feels on my tongue and how it would be irrelevant because I'd be tasting that there's God. All the other tastes are included in that. I wouldn't need to have them separately. Don't be afraid. Absorb the mind, absorb the intelligence. Celebrate the wins. Try to set up your life externally so that you can find the time and the space to go deep. And recognize that what Srila Prabhupada has asked us to do is not easy. It's not easy. Be compassionate on yourself if you sometimes find it difficult. It is difficult. But not forever. Prabhupada said until we become steady, it's a hard struggle with determination, and after that things come very easily. If you've ever ridden a bicycle in a mountainous area, who's ever ridden a bicycle on a very hilly or mountainous area? Anybody? I don't know if you're all shy or you just don't have any life experiences. So, when you're riding your bicycle up the hill, you may even have to get off and walk your bicycle. Who's here ever walked a bicycle up a hill? Anybody like that? Oh my God, that's a lot better. Am I the only one who's ever ridden a bicycle? So you may have to get off and walk your bicycle up the hill. But then going down on the other side of the hill, woo! I mean, you still have to steer. So until we become steady, yes, it is going to be a struggle. And until we're at least steadily chanting with Majjhima Vak. We are going to have to, as Prabhupada said, sometimes force the mind. Yes, it will be sometimes a hard struggle with determination. Yes, we're going to be sweating as we rub those pieces of wood together. But that shouldn't go on for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. Then we're going to have those symptoms that Srila Jiva Goswami talks about. What's nice is when we go deep, Krishna will help us. He wants to manifest in His name. He wants to manifest in our life. He wants the relationship to be restored. And He will help. So we've gone now to the time. I hope this has been helpful for all of you. Should we take any questions or should we just end because it's the time? I think it's time for Arti. We should probably just end. So you have your handouts where you can go more into this. If you're interested in what I talked about the levels of sound, again, if you just Google, just do a search for Bhakti Vigyan Goswami, Liberation Through Sound, you should find that. It's 15 hours. And it's quite technical and quite philosophical, but also he does much, much more. I gave you a little taste. So anything good in this presentation was from Srila Prabhupada, our acharyas like Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, Srila Jiva Goswami, from the Lord Himself and the Bhagavatam, from people who helped me with this like Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj, and anything bad in this presentation I am fully responsible for. Please take the good and leave aside the bad. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.